Okay, so welcome all to our shiur, and it's so nice to have some people already back here physically, and Be'ezrat Hashem, after the whole kaze khufshat limudim, mo'adei bet, whatever, we're going to be back for a whole stack of awesome shiurim coming up. We were meant to have a rabbi come speak today, but I canceled him because I thought there wouldn't be semester, and then they just let us know last moment that there will be semester. I didn't want to take a rabbi, bring him in for a few days' notice, so I decided to give the shiur myself. I hope that's okay with you all. So I'd like to start off just with a warm-up question. It's not an easy question, but a warm-up question. I do not think we discussed this here in this forum. So I think it could be an interesting discussion of it was like this fighter jet. Let me just turn off the sound. I don't know how to, okay, I should mute myself. Sorry, okay. So this fighter jet with an Israeli pilot, he comes and his mission is to take out this how many is a brigade? Brigade is huge, right? Okay, so a small group of enemy soldiers, right, of terrorists, and platoon, and to take out a platoon of enemy soldiers. And this fighter jet, our pilot, he flies and he sees them on his device, and he is about to shoot them. However, someone down on the ground has a nun mem neged metusim, a missile that can shoot down planes. One of our soldiers, and he sees this whole situation, and he understands that the pilot got confused. They're two sides of the mountain, and he was accidentally going to shoot down a whole platoon of Israeli soldiers, and therefore kill them all in a few moments. Now this guy down here at the ground can shoot down the pilot and kill him, and by that save the lives of the platoon of Israeli soldiers. Is he meant to shoot him down or not?
Option C.
So there is no option C, unfortunately. Right, you can wave your Israeli flag if they only knew that above them there was someone who's going to shoot them. I'm assuming the soldiers down there didn't understand the situation, right? So again, we're in lab conditions, so there is no option C. We have only two options. Option one is let the pilot kill the whole platoon of Israeli soldiers, or shoot him down yourself. Yeah, fair. So Adasa says, perfect. I was waiting for something to say. The trolley dilemma takonit, very famous dilemma, and that's why the title of our shiur was what was it? Anyone? I don't know if you guys read the flyer, because the maskira, the secretary works hard on him. I don't know. So yeah, right. A big famous debate, something like that. Right. You look at it afterwards and you'll correct me. So yeah, she really works hard for them. So please do her a favor and open the flyer. So the trolley dilemma, right? The dilemma takonit was a very famous dilemma of what happens when you have, let's say, 5 workers who are standing on tracks of a train, and there's a trolley that's gonna ride them over. Lidros, come on, help me out here. Run them over. That's right. They run them over, right? However, you have you're there at the field box, because like the box where you could play with the stick and maneuver the train to the other track, therefore killing only one person. Do you pull the lever killing that one person, or do you let him kill those 5 people? So interesting enough, they actually try this out in real life. They brought people to to stam a khad pami job, just to check that out. Can you help us out here? We're building a new train track. Do you have a day to help us? We'll pay you per day. They brought people in, and they had a screen of a camera of the video, a video of what's happening real time with the trains. And they, at some point, after the guy who was working there felt comfortable, they switched off their live video and changed it to a pre-play video, which had that actual dilemma. All right, so he was gonna run over 5 people, and you could press the button to shift the train and to kill 1 person. And they wanted to see what people did. That's the end of the story. Okay. No, listen. In Wikipedia, it used to say, but they changed it. I don't know, maybe they put it back. But when I looked lastly, they changed it. It used to say that they did fMRIs on everyone afterwards. And they found out that the ones who pressed the button had something wrong over there in their brain. They used to say it. They took it off Wikipedia. But that's what they used to say. Interesting, right? But we are now going to ask halachically, what is the halacha? What is one meant to do if he's, God forbid, put in that situation? So Nadav is introducing us to a halacha called din rodef, right? It's a halacha we don't really like to speak about publicly because here in Bar Ilan especially, it's a little sensitive. We had a student in the law department of Bar Ilan who was convinced that one of the prime ministers in Israel, he was mazmach, duchugi. All right, I stand. Why? Lo naim. So for my department, wow, for my department. All right, a lot to be proud of. So our Bar Ilan student, who was computer science and mishpatim and law, and he was convinced that one of the Israeli prime ministers had what's called din rodef. Din rodef is a halachic term for someone who is chasing another person in order to cause him harm. All right? So the halakha says, if I see person A chasing person B and trying to stab him, I have the obligation to kill person A, therefore saving person B's life. Now, if I could do it without killing him, if I could just like shoot his hand and then cut his hand off, and then he can't kill him, that's what you must do. As the Gemara says, you could like save him only taking off one of his limbs. However, if you can't, then you must kill him. And that's the halakha, right? So that student, Bar Ilan, computer science and law student, was convinced that Yitzhak Rabin had that din, and therefore he decided to take the law into his hands and to murder him. So we don't speak publicly so much about din rodef since then, I know. However, that is a halacha, din rodef, and Nadav says perhaps this pilot has a din rodef because he is chasing those, not brigade, come on, platoon of Israeli soldiers, and he wants to kill them, and therefore we have the obligation to take down the pilot and therefore save their lives. Sorry? A question mark. Oh, no, I'm saying, not Nadav said. Nadav raises the question. Okay. Right. Okay. So perfect question. Can we shoot down part of the plane in our lab conditions? No. Aww. No, he's standby. Okay, wait. That's a very good question. I'm sorry. Like I ran by it, but that was a very, very good question. Okay, so is it a soldier who's going to shoot down part of the brigade of the platoon, or is he a standby? What's the nafkamina? What's the difference? יפה מאוד. Is it הבא להורגך השכם להורגו? In other words, is he trying to kill me, and therefore I have the right to, obligation to, not quite clear, right? But to kill him before he manages to get me down? Or am I just, nothing's gonna ever happen to me? Just I'm watching a scenario that I'm not part of it, right? Very, very good question. In our situation, he's standby, right? Also in the Trolley dilemma and also in our pilot situation, he's not part of it. So, what do you think? Opinions, come on. Bring them on. Says Eliezer, just a second, just for those in the Zoom, okay, I'm going to repeat. Eliezer says, perhaps the pilot doesn't have the intention to kill those soldiers down on the ground. And therefore, even though he's going to kill them, since he doesn't have an intention of killing, therefore, he does not have a din rodef, and therefore... Oh, okay. So then we get into a question of what does intention mean? Does intention mean to kill those specific people, or intention to kill, but he doesn't matter who I'm killing, right? But that's a little... It's a good question. It's just a little too nuanced for where I want to get to in our shir, so we won't go there, but it's a wonderful point. Oh, yeah.
Like the mother is having trouble during birth, like the babies or this. I don't know that it has much to do with this.
Right. Okay. So Hodaya is kind of responding to Eliezer, saying, does Rodef have anything to do with intention? We know that if there's a baby who's like the mother is chas v'shalom in life danger due to the fetus / baby, right? Which is exactly the point that's important over here. We know that we can kill the baby to save the mother's life. Is it true? Depends what situation the baby is at. In other words, did he? No, you're right. Exactly. No, but that's exactly the point. If the baby is already took his head out, that's where things get more complex. Okay? But Hodaya is raising a very important point. And there was a very sad situation that happened in, I don't remember what country, like some country, some place in Europe, like a very important rabbi's house, that he had the maidservant. And she was cleaning, and suddenly one of the members of the house just collapsed, and he fainted, and she wanted to wake him up. So she was, all like shaken up. She sees that this guy fainted. She grabs from the counter a cup of water and pours it on him. Unfortunately, it wasn't water. It was very dangerous acidic liquid. And like the story says that he died from it. All right. I don't know. Very, very sad. True story. And the question is, if I were to be there looking at that maidservant running with the cup of acid, and I know it's acid, can I shoot her down? So theoretically, again, Anaya would love for us to shoot her hand. However, we can't shoot her hand. In our lab conditions, we can only shoot her down. Can we shoot her down or no? The answer is no. Because she doesn't have an intention of killing. She has an intention of saving one's life. So she was Jewish, but even if she was a good, good question. I don't know. But she was Jewish. No, you're not. We start talking about Yigal Amir, Rabin, killing Goyim, so no, we're not allowed to kill Goyim. Absolutely not. The question is, yeah, if you look at the basic halachic level, is it to save a Jewish person's life? Do we take the same measures as we do for Jews and for non-Jews? Perhaps they will see a difference. I don't know, and therefore I'm not gonna respond with anything clear-cut because I honestly don't know. But it's a good question. All right. However, in our situation, she was Jewish, and the answer is no. We're not allowed to shoot her down because the pe'ula, the action she was doing was pe'ulat hatzara, was an action of saving. She was trying to save. But when we get to our pilots, okay. So before we get to our pilot and ask if he was doing the action of saving or the action of killing, yeah. What's the dilemma there? With the baby? Right, and therefore? Saving. The baby is just trying to be born, right? It's the action of trying to be born. And therefore what? Exactly, and therefore if the baby already took his head out, we don't kill him. But it's nuanced. I don't want to say anything clear cut about the baby because it is nuanced, and there are different things. If you know which ivar or rosh or whatever, I don't remember now, so I don't want to say stam. But I'd like to reference us to a very famous Tosefta in Turuma. All right. Let me read it out. In תרומות, sorry, תוספת בתרומות. Listen carefully. סיעה של בני אדם, שאמרו להם נוכרים, תנו לנו אחד מכם ונהרגהו, ואם לאו, הרי אנו הורגין את כולן. Alright, סיעה. What does the word סיעה mean? Group, right? By the way, like the Shiites, the Muslim Shiites, Iran, right? Iran are Shiites, right? It comes from the word סיעה. Stam, general knowledge, all right? They were like the סיעה. They were the group who believed that Ali should be the one who replaces Muhammad and not the other guy, I forgot his name. Anyhow, so they were the סיעה, they were the group who supported that, so they're called Shiites, סיעה. So the word סיעה, a group. So a group of people that non-Jewish enemies surrounded them, and they said, give us one of you, and we'll kill you. And if you don't send off one of you guys to death, we are going to be killing you all. The halacha says, the Tosefta says, יהרגו כולן, ואל ימסרו להם נפש אחת מישראל. They should all be killed, and not send out a person to his death. Can someone volunteer? What do you think? But hang on beforehand, let's just continue. Let's just continue. אבל אם ייחדוהו להם, כגון שיחדו לשבע בן בכרי, ייתנו להם ואל יהרגו. שבע בן בכרי, who was שבע בן בכרי? שבע בן בכרי, he was someone who, right? He was מורד, traitor. He was traitor at David's kingdom, and Yoav ben Tzeruiah, the Sar Tzava, the chief of command, I think it's called, of David's army, comes to where Sheva ben Bichri was at, to his city, and he says, if you do not give us Sheva ben Bichri, who must be killed, we will kill you all. And then a smart woman gave him. כן? בסדר, אתה עושה? מדרש כזה, אוקיי, לא מכיר, מגניב. So what does Yichdula mean? Does Yichdula mean pinpointing a specific person? So this is where our sages debate. Is it singling out someone or singling out someone specific who did something wrong? That's the question. And therefore also, Tanaya's question, even if he says, I'm willing to go out by myself, right? Do we accept it? Or do we say, hey, but you're not chayav mitah, like Shabbat ben Bichri. Mored b'malchut chayav mitah. Someone who rebels the kingdom, he must be killed.
They should all sacrifice themselves and not send one person to die.
Right. We don't send someone to die.
Obligated to sacrifice himself. And the volunteer is allowed on his own merits, but not on anybody else's.
Okay, maybe one is allowed to only sacrifice himself with everyone else, but not himself by his own. However, I think he is allowed to. Why do I think so? Because the most famous story that we all hear in our Tkasim in Yom HaZikaron, which is coming up next week, is the famous story. Come on, help me out. Roy Klein, an Israeli soldier who, when a grenade was thrown at his platoon, I'm learning a new word, I'm like using it a lot, it's like it sinks in, on his platoon, then he jumped on the grenade in order, and he shouted Shema Yisrael, in order to save everyone else.
Okay, we choose him to go jump on him.
You're right. However, it does seem like a very similar situation. Or that you all die, or that one of you dies, right? And he voluntarily, right? So I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Nadav is raising a question. No. It's a fair question to raise. Who said that what Roy Klein did was halachically the right choice? Good question. I do not know, and therefore I will not answer. Bali, let's speak. I want to get to more things in our shiur, so I'm gonna kind of make this short. However, just quickly with the situation of whatever. Okay, so I'm going back to the maidservant. Right, the maidservant. She was trying to save someone from his faint, and she was doing the pi'ulah, the action of saving, while the pilot is doing the action of trying to kill. Even though he's trying to kill the right people, is the action of trying to kill, and therefore we cannot compare those two situations.
In this particular, you said it's a lab situation. Is the enemies he's supposed to shoot down, are they a threat to everybody else, or are they just there?
I'm assuming they're just there. All right, we can assume they're just there. They're not a threat, not an imminent threat to the soldiers anyhow. Okay. I'll explain why this is like super like realistic, actual. I don't know what the right word is, but autonomous vehicles, right? One of the main reasons that we don't have them driving around our cities these days is because there are many regulatory issues that they haven't solved yet, right? It's not that the technology isn't there. As we know, there are autonomous vehicles driving around some places in the world. I think in Israel they have like a very difficult time, like with all the Israeli drivers, but they're gonna get there one day. But the real issue is regulatory, which has a lot to do with morality. In other words, how do I program my autonomous vehicle? All right. So let's say, okay. So Hadassah says, listen, take whatever you have now. It's better than what we have the current situation, right? So do it. However, we cannot release from our companies autonomous vehicles that do not, do the maximum that they can. No, I'm saying regulate. You're right, Hadassah, but regulation, wants to have it very clear. This is dinei nefashot. So what happens when the autonomous car drives and it sees they see a few little children jumping after a ball into the street, and then there's this old man on the side of the road that the vehicle could swerve and kill him and save the life of those 3 children. What do I program the autonomous vehicle to do? Interesting question. I think I heard this somewhere. I can't verify because I don't remember where it was, but that they actually asked, I don't know, there was like a survey or something. What do you think the right thing to do is? And in like Japan and China, they said, well, of course, save the elderly person because elderly people are important. And in America, they're like, what kind of question is that? Very sad. But anyway, how do you program your autonomous vehicle, right? So when it reaches this kind of dilemma, where you have like 1 person or 5 people, what do you do? And then the family of the person who got killed, who does he sue? Does he sue the owner of the vehicle? Does he sue the people who programmed the vehicle? Does he sue the company? It's a very big moral issue that they're encountering. This is just one example out of many. Okay. Also, there's we're not going to go into in depth. Just some like a nice add-on to that. So Eitan Kupiecki, he deals with it. These kind of things, more like moral issues with autonomous cars, and he says that we can't say, for example, that it's shev al taseh. Let's say with a trolley, I'm not killing. I'm just sitting there and letting things happen. When you're programming a car, right? There's no such thing as I'm not doing anything. You're programming to do A or to do B. It's all in your hands, right? There's no remain neutral. Exactly, that's what I was looking for, right? There's no remain neutral. When you're programming, you decide it swerves or you decide it continues, but you're the one who's programming it, right? So this makes the dilemmas more crucial. Sorry? Yeah, you're right. That swerve takes another action. That is when you are driving the car. But when I'm programming an autonomous vehicle, then I can't say just let the vehicle continue is staying neutral because it's just the same line of code. The question is, do I say right or do I say continue? But it's the same word of code. So therefore, it makes things even more complex. Halachically, regarding the arrow, we do not shoot down the pilot. We do not, because Sheva al-Tahseh, he did not have the intention of killing those soldiers, even though he's not doing an action of saving. He still is not trying to kill those soldiers, and therefore he does not have din odef, and we cannot shoot him down. However, this is up to dispute. Hannibal, yeah, נכון. I don't know. It's a whole different discussion that I do not want to get into, but it's a good question. Yes. Yeah.
You don't always know whether
Right.
coming to kill, the intention of killing those people.
Right. Yeah, right. Good question. What do we do when you have a safek? Is he trying to kill or no? I don't know. Good question. I don't know. Okay. Moving on, I'll explain you. I was like debating between like 4 different topics, what I want us to learn today. And I decided to start with this, but I didn't imagine it would take us half an hour. So we're in a little bit of a problem. Okay, I'm gonna try quickly going into a little bit of a controversial issue, a controversial topic, because I do not think I'm gonna have more opportunities to give more shiurim. Maybe the 2 last weeks of semester, I don't know, but we'll see. Because things were like nidchas, like pushed in, so we don't have much of like empty slots, and therefore we're almost booked with various fascinating rabbis. But these topics that I thought would be interesting for us to discuss, I don't know if we'll get to, so I'm going to try quickly talking about a very interesting topic, which is tachbura tziburit b'Shabbat. Very heated. Do we, as religious people in the Jewish state, support or go against or stay neutral, if there's such a thing in this situation, of allowing public transportation to continue as normal on Shabbat? Okay, before we learn and we talk about the different things, I'd love to hear your like initial gut feelings. Ariella. Okay, good point. Ariella is saying, regardless of what the halakha should be, the fact is that liberal religious Jews are bothered by it much more than actual secular Jews in Israel. Could be true, could be not. I don't know. I never checked it. Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't not that it's really not necessary. You really want most of the Chilonim live by a beach. So they can get to the beach on Shabbos without lots of eat. Doesn't bother them. They actually like the quiet, not like
Okay.
not think.
Okay, so Ariella is saying from her knowledge of like watching different things, the vast majority of Chilonim, of secular Jews in Israel. Okay, but majority. It doesn't seem to bother the majority of the secular Jews in Israel. Okay. מעולה, קיבלתי. Like maybe yes, maybe not. I never checked it. But Hodaya, please.
Seems to me that people who want to violate Shabbos and have a car can do that, and people who don't have as much money are limited. Like that is a little of the issue. Because I'm not Jewish.
יפה. Says Hodaya, listen, there are some people who can't afford a car and they don't have enough money to live in a fancy apartment next to the beach, that they could just walk there on Shabbat. And therefore, if they want to get to the beach, they have to use public transportation. And since the government doesn't allow it, right, then they, because they're like not on the high society sociological class, something like that, yeah, all right, so it's not fair for them. And therefore, to Hodaya, personally, it doesn't actually really matter if there's public transportation on Shabbat or no. Yes, thank you. Nadav. Mhm. We can't that way, of course. No, everything has to be like,
Do I want is it to be a Shemoneh Shabbat country? Yes.
Mhm.
Do I think this? Yeah, and you have to be like that. It's not the right thing, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Because there is a Rama. There will be public transport and where. Of course, you can't have it in Neighbor, it would be a complete disaster. So in Hiloni, majorities, neighborhoods and cities, there's no problem as long as the province that they all force choose to work on Shabbat as drivers.
Okay, so Nadav says it's very complex. Some areas maybe no, like Bnei Brak, we're not going to allow that. Some areas like very secular neighbors in Tel Aviv, maybe we are going to allow it. However, we're not going to let them force Jewish people to be drivers. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then Eliezer says it's zelo kfiyah that we don't allow them to have public transportation on Shabbat because Mhm. Right. Okay, so Eliezer says a Jewish state means a Shabbat keeping state. Mhm.
אין צורך הכרחי, שבני תפיל בשבת, כל הכבוד לך שאתה רוצה ללכת להם בשבת, זה לא עד כדי כך הכרחי שאני...
Eliezer says, listen, this is a Jewish state. A Jewish state means a Shabbat keeping, like it's a Shabbat keeping state, and therefore, if you want to go to the beach on Shabbat, then or work in high tech, study computer science and law together, but don't kill anyone. Rather, continue your degrees, make a good job, live in a fancy apartment in Tel Aviv next to the beach, and go to the beach. Do not expect me, the Jewish state, to allow you to have public transportation on Shabbat. Sorry. Okay. So tell us what's happening in the Merkaz now. Mm-hmm. Yafeh. Biduk. So this is a very, very important point, okay? Which is like chazitit against what Ariella was saying, all right, from her experience. Hadassah is saying that when we have people in Tel Aviv who want to just not have to worry about the expense of having a car and the traffic and the parking, siyut. The reason they own a car is just because of weekends. And this is something that not one and not two and not three and not 10 and not 100 and not 1,000 people say. Many, many people say the reason I own a car is just because of Sofashim, end of the week, because of Shabbat. When I want to go visit, I want to do Kiddush at my parents' house and then go with my girlfriend to the beach, and we can't because we have to own a car for that. And that is the reason that we have a lot of traffic in the Merkaz in Tel Aviv. That's the reason that Tel Aviv is horrific in terms of parking, because you, Smotrich, and religious people who voted for him are coming into my neighborhood in Tel Aviv and saying, I'm going to decide how your streets look like, where I'm never even going to step there in my life. Okay. So that's the thing. Some people, like me, with all these like sweating guys in the car in the bus, you never see me there. I'm gonna ride my like Mercedes or whatever, right? But we have the middle class people, which are the majority of people, right? And they would probably say, if I knew I had good public transportation that's reliable throughout the whole week, I will not use. I will use it, and I will not own a car. And that would save a lot of traffic and parking issues. And the reason that we have those issues is because of the religious people who voted for the religious Knesset members who say we're going to leave the government if you allow public transportation Shabbat. And therefore, it's you guys who are coming into our neighborhoods, kofim otanu, you're forcing us to live by your lifestyle, or to like adjust somehow to your lifestyle, even though you never ever stepped into my neighborhood. And that is disgusting. Okay? So that's the one extreme. The other extreme is, slicha, we're a Jewish country. What's the difference between a Jewish state and a French state and an English state and a South African state? We are Jewish. And part of being Jewish doesn't mean you have to be 100% religious, but like, Shabbat is like basic. But then the next question is, okay, so what about kashrut? Do we allow stores to open non-kosher stores? I don't know. Or on Pesach, can they sell chametz? For Jewish state, legally, or they do? Oh. So the restaurants open on Shabbos. There are non-kosher restaurants open, but some things, Yom Kippur, for example, we don't really see as much, right? Yom Kippur, there's no public transportation. That was a whole big fight, because that's when things like got really, really to the peak of the clash. You're right. Sorry. No, but it wasn't something. It wasn't the government. נכון, unfortunately. But so we have one side saying, Slicha, this is a Jewish state. You want to be secular? I'm not going to go into your house and tell you turn off the TV and don't turn on the light. But I will request very, very strongly, meaning I'm going to force you to, in the Farhensia, not drive your car. I'm going to even have policemen who are going to be on the streets, because you need policemen on Shabbat, just because you guys are driving, because if everyone was religious, we didn't need policemen to be on the streets with speed cameras or whatever on Shabbat, right? But we have policemen. I don't know if they do speed tickets on Shabbat, but there are policemen that work. People are working on Shabbat, and they wouldn't be working from the government. They wouldn't work if there was no Chilul Shabbat, right? I think we can all agree on that. So the government is saying, I'm going to allow Chilul Shabbat befarhensia. Farhensia means like like outside with a big crowd, like publicly. I'm going to allow public Chilul Shabbat, but I will not support it with public transportation. That's a red line. Okay, so why does Haifa work so well? Does it work so well? Is everyone so happy about it? I'm assuming there's some people in Haifa who would say, I'd rather have no public transportation. Sorry? That's true. But the question is, we as religious Jews, who do we support? So, some an interesting anecdote. I know someone who voted in the elections a few years ago, before the whole non-stop rounds of elections. He voted for a party which supported public transportation on Shabbat, and he said, the reason I'm voting for them is because I believe halachically it's better to have public transportation on Shabbat. It's less Chilul Shabbat, less people are stepping on the pedal and therefore igniting, the petrol. Where? Right. You could move away, you could live elsewhere, right? So this is an Ariela. Slicha, this is a Jewish state. So, but hang on, Ariela, but then if we go with your logic, there's a next step, right? You want to buy pork? Go to what they sell pork any other country. Why is that different?
And you're regardless of religious Jews or not even Jews, because at least I personally see this is something very special about how we do it is a democratic country.
Right. But it's democratic but Jewish, right? Right. But so then I'm asking, so why have non-kosher food? And again, I'm asking, why not take the next step and say, no non-kosher food. You want non-kosher food? Travel to Paris. There's awesome. No, you're not from Mizafat? Yeah. I'm assuming your neighbors had some awesome non-kosher food over there. They don't need to eat it in Israel. Okay, so here we get to a difference.
Someone mentioned that years ago in Tel Aviv, you would walk around for half an hour, you wouldn't be able to find one kosher restaurant. Now, every 5 steps, you can still find. It just shows that it's being like a religious Jew. It is accessible even in places like Tel Aviv.
So being a religious Jew is accessible. You have non-kosher, you have kosher restaurants around. Right. That's true. However, my question is again, if theoretically, at the establishment of the state, it was very clear to everyone that there is no such thing as non-kosher food. Like in Israel, makosher non-kosher. Why would anyone have non-kosher food here? It doesn't make any sense. And then comes 2026, and someone say, what? How about I open a non-kosher McDonald's? Genius idea. He'd open it. I can imagine that many of the people who are aligned with the school of thought that we should not allow public transportation on Shabbat would also say, do not allow him to open a non-kosher restaurant. At home, eat whatever you want. I'm not going to make sure you do meat and milk in your kitchen. But in the public, to open a non-kosher store, mapitam, right? You hear what I'm saying? Or you disagree? To me, it makes sense. In other words, we're used to this kind of reality, and we're saying, okay, it's something to change, right? But I kind of think that it stems from the same ideas. Do we believe that we, as religious people, should control things in the public sphere or not at all. And I get the chiluk, the distinction between if it's publicly funded, if it's not publicly funded, right? So I just want to raise some interesting thoughts that Rav Yuval Shirlo raised in his shiur, and then I'm gonna tell you about an idea that I had about this, and I spoke about it with various rabbis, including Rav Yuval Shirlo, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. So, first of all, just halachically, is it a halachic problem to have public transportation on Shabbat? The answer is there's a very important rabbi. Okay, obviously, there's a very important rabbi who went through the steps, step by step, like all the halachic details, and he proved that having public transportation Shabbat that non-Jews run, and that you could somehow solve the way of paying, that you're not paying on Shabbat. Like he found like a way to do it. There's no halachic issue with it at all. I don't remember the rabbi's name. Sorry? So Uvdin Nechol is a joker, right? Anything you don't like, you say, Uvdin Nechol, right? Sorry? No, not joker. It's like a joker. It's like, you could always like take it out of your pocket. Uvdin Nechol, right? But if it was never not allowed, I don't know, right? So, anyway, Rav Zilberstein from Bnei Brak, just across here, he said, every halachic detail that you wrote is correct, but your halachic psak is completely false, because this is not a debate about the halachic details. It's a debate about the tziviyon hayudish shel Medinat Yisrael. It's about the essence. How does a Jewish state operate? Okay? If people would keep Shabbat just because the Medina says, oh, you must keep Shabbat, right? What's the erich? What's the meaning of that kind of Shabbat that people keep just because the Medina forces them? You know? Okay, Judaism forces me, but if I'm a Chiloni and I say, you know what? I don't believe in Shabbat, I don't believe in God, right? But I'm keeping Shabbat because the government forced me. Do we say, psh, koyech, or do we say, what's it worth? Question. I don't have an answer. Question. What? Both. Because. Oh, okay. So in general, no, Ariel is right. People who are doing a scholarship, right? I'm assuming some of us are getting a scholarship for coming here, for attending. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't be here, right? I'm assuming. Okay, pizza is a good enough reason, right? You stay for the pizza, right? So does it mean that we have the like less of an ideal situation because we're coming here for the pizza or for the money or for whatever? And maybe yes, maybe not, but maybe, as you know, he was responding, if you do it not for the right ideal reasons, but eventually you put yourself in a world of Kodesh, you keep on studying Torah. Yefe. Okay, so what Ariel is saying now, many Chilonim, they're kind of like Kiddush or whatever, right? Not because they're forced. Now, you all know of the law forcing every parent, right? All parents, the Israeli law, every parent who a Jewish boy is born, right? When they have a Jewish boy born, then the law says you must circumcise him at age of 8 days. You know that, right? No, of course not. There's no law. There's no such law. However, so many Jews, completely secular, circumcise their child. Now I have a question. If the law would force every Jewish parent to circumcise their child at 8 days old, how many of them would have flew to Cyprus, have him be 8 days there, and then come back afterwards, right? Like weddings, right? That's what I'm referring to. Exactly, like our weddings. In other words, when you force, are you creating a love towards Shabbat? Wow, I love Shabbat, that they force me, that I can't have a bus, and therefore I have to have my car. Yay, how beautiful is Shabbat, right? That's what everyone's saying? Obviously not, right? So this school of thought, which is pro-public transportation, is saying, if we want people to love Shabbat, and we don't want everyone to be religious because we're forcing them, we want them to be religious because we want them to love religion, the way to do that is definitely not by forcing them that in their neighborhoods in Tel Aviv, there will be no public transportation. That is not a step forward.
Flush out the people who weren't in it beginning.
No. But what about people who are like chetzi, and suddenly when you say, I have to, I dafka don't want to. Mitzvah mitam medina. I don't know if that's okay. So look, the thing is that this is creating a boomerang situation. All right, when we're forcing them to like abide by our values, then they're throwing it back. You know, like it comes back. That's like in a not nice way. In fact, some places, I think it was, I don't want to say the name because I don't, but like one of the rabbis here was telling me that in his yishuv, they have free public transportation to do davka. You know, it's like you don't allow us to do public transportation, so we, the area, the government, the area, what's the area called? The city hall. You see it as a area, like the building itself. Whatever. The governor of that, you know, city, whatever. He said, I am funding public transportation so everyone can go to the beach. And then you have Mesoratim, you have people who are like traditional, you know, they don't drive to the beach on Shabbat. Maybe they'll watch TV, but like not there. Okay, if there's free, I'm gonna go, you know. So you're basically by the fact that we are enforcing our values, we are actually gonna get even worse. A point to think about. Okay, so Eliezer is saying, I don't care if you guys all hate Shabbat. I do not want the public field, the public tzibur. I don't want there to be public transportation, regardless if you hate it or love it. I don't want there to be public transportation. Exactly. I don't care who drives or doesn't drive. We should not have public transportation. But then if that fact causes many people to be mechalel Shabbat, you're fine with that. No, just that's a price. Maybe you'll say okay, but that's a price.
So shit just like the last one?
No, I'm not saying. We don't have a bottom line over here. Okay, so there is a kind of like middle ground over there. Amanat Gavizon Medan. I don't know if you guys know Harav Yaakov Medan. He's a Rosh Yeshiva of Har Etzion, Yeshivat Agush, and Ruth Gavizon. She was like a very, very left liberal professor, judge. And they sat down together to make like a roadmap of how we can get along, religious and non-religious, here in Israel. Very interesting things. And their Tachbora Tzibut B'Shabbat, they had a lot to discuss. I do not know the specific details of what their conclusion is. But again, over there's some middle ground. Ron Chuldai, the Rosh Iriyah of Tel Aviv, he suggested that they won't be called Otobusei Shabbat or Otobusei Sofash. Sof Shabbat, which, you know, it doesn't have the word Shabbat inside, like, you know, in your face, to kind of respect, but he still said we should have public transportation here in Tel Aviv. And many people offer that, like, solution that Bnei Brak, no. Bet Shemesh, no, right? But other places, Tel Aviv, yes. Haifa, as we have now, yes, right? And some places should have, some places shouldn't. And I don't know how, but maybe you make a poll and like if 60% want, I don't know exactly how you do it. I don't know, but the vast majority of Jews in Beit Shemesh are Shabbat observant. Halach? No, Ariel. But again, if we counted the votes in the Kalpi in our city in Beit Shemesh, I think we wouldn't get to like a third who were opposed. I don't know. I don't know the number. I don't know the numbers. So I won't argue. I don't know if most. Do you think most in Believe? Most? Oh, yeah. For example, as an of the country. No, that's the difference. We elected a poll of a country, but I'm saying, as a country, maybe most cities rather than it won't be public transportation. But if we did per city, then I think we'd get different results. Right.
Even though they elected any government.
Right. That's true. You heard that. You're right. However, we could say some things are not. They don't have to be on the Medina level, on the whole country level. They could be on the city level, right? If we have a right-wing or a left-wing government who gives Yishuvim to the Arabs for peace, yes or no, that is something that doesn't affect only me in Tel Aviv. It affects you in Ashdod and you in Beersheba, right? But if it's per city, and therefore it would make sense to have that kind of solution. Okay, so I came with this question to the three rabbis, Rav Yuval Shirlo, Rav Michael Avraham, and Rav Chagai Londin. Three rabbis with three very different opinions on different topics. And I had a question. All right. There is a halacha. This is like my take on it. All right. So it's not my opinion, but here's like my catch on this whole sugya. Listen carefully because it's fascinating. All right. This will probably bother many of you. So like, don't all like attack me at once. But there's a question. If you are allowed to invite a secular Jew over to your house for a meeting. No, for a meeting. How come?
Does it depend what day of the week is?
No, doesn't depend. Because if you invite him over to your house for a meeting, you're going to have to serve him some water or cake. And he'll eat and drink without saying a bracha. And you, by serving him food without saying a bracha, you are being machshil. You are being... What's the word machshil? Come on, help me out. You're
Presenting him with a bad thing to do?
You are causing him to eat without a bracha. Because without you, he would not eat that piece of cake and that glass of water would not be in his mouth. The question is, are you allowed to have a machshil? No, machshil, lo machshir, machshil. You're causing him. But enable is mafsher. Machshil. Okay, so you're causing him to do something wrong. So, rabbis dispute. However, if I'm not mistaken, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach do not catch me on the word, but their psak is you are allowed to. How come? Listen carefully because this is crucial. You're allowed to because if you invite him over and do not serve him food, what's going to be? Chilul Hashem, meaning he will hate you. Those religious Jews. When I invite people over, I always serve them something. They never serve me anything. Disgusting, so rude. And you're causing him to hate you. And the issue of causing someone to hate you isn't any better. In fact, it's worse than causing him to eat without a bracha. The commandment of do not hate another Jew. You're making him hate you is even worse than causing him to eat without a bracha. So now here comes Yedidia, and he asks, I have a question. Doesn't causing the whole Tel Aviv and its neighbors, society, to hate the religious Jews more worse than allowing them to have a non-Jew drive buses in their neighborhoods? Question, I don't know. I don't have a clear-cut answer. Question. So I presented this question to Rav Shirlo, Rav Michael Avraham, and Rav Chagai Londin. I don't know if you guys know these fascinating people, each one to himself. Rav Michael Avraham is like far to the left halachically, like he's a very, very liberal mindset, like thinks, he doesn't really, very, very rational, and very like he thinks for himself, and he doesn't really feel like he owes the public to like be okay with with what they think. And I asked him, and he says, "What do you mean? It's immoral to have chilonim not be able to drive public transportation on Shabbat. They want to get to the beach, and we are, because we believe they shouldn't, so we're forcing them to do it. That's immoral. And I am obliged to the moral values that I believe in, just like I'm obliged to halachic values. And therefore, of course, we should allow and support public transportation on Shabbat." Okay, moving on to Rav Yuval Shirlo. He is the one who I based this whole shiur on his shiur, right? And there's more things that I didn't really talk about, but fascinating shiur. If you want, I can send to you afterwards. Really, really interesting things. It's in Hebrew. And I presented with this question. And as I start speaking, I'm like, Rabbi, with the thing about the food, and you can't give you could give him a secular Jew to eat, even though he won't take a bracha, because he listens to me. He's like, and after a few seconds, he understands where I'm going. He's like, nah, come on. I'm like, why? He says, because this is a tzibur. This is many people. It's not 1%. 1% to eat without a bracha, 1% to hate you, that's worse. But a tzibur, to make a whole tzibur be Chal Shabbos. But then I came to him the next time with another question, Rabbi, but to make the whole tzibur hate me? Why is that any better, right? Why is that any better? So he's like, okay, you're right. However, the Nevi'im really spoke out about Shabbat. And he made a distinction. He says, kashrut, I wouldn't enforce. The McDonald's situation where I gave you beforehand, I'm not going to enforce. Because kashrut is important to me, but not as important as Shabbat. And Shabbat, for me, to have Shabbat felt in the country, even if I have people hate. And he says, yeah, I have a relative, Rav Shabbat told me, he has a relative who hates the religious people, and all she knows about Shabbat is that the religious people make us not drive. He says, I'd rather that than have them driving on Shabbat and not knowing what Shabbat is at all. Okay, Rav Shalom. Rav Chagai London, much more to the right, religiously, hashkafically, very, very more to the right, which means like more conservative, I guess that's the word, right? Not like the big C conservative, small C conservative, or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So it was amazing. He was like, he was Chad Mishmait, very realistic, but very to the right. All right. So as Rav Michael Avraham is like very to the left, Rav Shaul is like more to the middle, but also very to the left. Rav Chagai London, he sits down like a king. All right. He sits down. It was after Ma'ariv, sitting down, and then I'm like, Arav, I have a question. He's like, yeah. So like, Rabbi, just in terms of like public and Shabbat, he looks at me, he's like, And like, just like in terms of there's like the sugya about eating, giving a chironi. I started like mum, like I was, this is like, the way he looked at me was like scary, and he's like, come on, you serious? He says, if we were like 30 years ago, I hear you, but like now, who cares? There's like 20 chironim who are like make, protests in Balfour. Who cares about them? Listen, we are winning, okay? You have to learn to win. We're winning. We're not losing, right? We are creaming them. The vast majority of Jews, they love us. They want it to be a more religious country, and we're growing exponentially in terms of demographics, and we're winning, and we shouldn't give in just because some confused people in Balfour think that we should have public education. Who cares about them? Who cares? Fascinating, eh? So I'm leaving us off with this question because I wasn't convinced. First of all, I'm not, me personally, I'm not convinced that Chagai London is right in terms of the numbers. Is it only 20 or 200 confused people from Balfour? I do not think that's true, all right? And maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. Ariella was seeming to think that also the government and the Khatufim and everything, same people, Nachon. Could be, yes, could be. Could be. Ariella, could be. I do not know, okay? However, to me, it doesn't seem mufrach. It doesn't seem like so bizarre that there are people who are not necessarily like anti-baby, anti-everything that's religious, but just say, I don't want to hold a car. I want to have public transportation. Sorry? No, he was saying, we the religious people, we're winning the country. Why are we waiting? Wait 5 years. Who's going to hear about those people, like old people who were like making protests in Tel Aviv, right? Again, to me, it seems like reality is elsewhere, but perhaps he's right. I do not know. Okay, I never tested him. I never tested reality. But from what my personal perceiving reality is different. However, I'm leaving us with this thought: do we support? Do we go against? Or are we neutral? We don't know. Both sides convinced us. I do not have a clear-cut answer, and I'm raising it here for your own thoughts, debates, discussions, and like you're welcome to discuss it with other people and have new ideas, and I'd be happy to hear them because it's very interesting to me. Shkoyach, all right. בסדר, בשמחה. Okay, 1 second. Let's see if anything interesting in the chat. No. Okay, perfect.
תודה רבה.
בשמחה, ביי ביי.